140 rows. That is a real spreadsheet, and maybe it is yours. One column for the company, one for the date, one for the role, and a last column, the widest one, for the reply. In 130 of those rows, that last column is empty, not rejected, because a rejection is at least an answer, empty. And after enough weeks of that silence, a quiet sentence starts forming underneath all the columns, a sentence nobody types into the sheet, but almost everyone in the situation ends up thinking. First it is applying, doesn't work. Then a layer under that where it actually hurts. It becomes something is wrong with me. I want to talk about that second sentence because it is false, and I want to be careful about how I show you it is false because there are actually two different claims hiding inside it and they need two different kinds of evidence. The first claim is that the silence is mostly not about you. That one I'm going to prove with numbers from the market itself. The second claim is that the failure here is the ordinary expected result, not a special event that needs a special explanation like your own inadequacy. That one I'm going to make easier to hold with a law of nature, but I want to keep them separate the whole way because if I let the physics quietly pretend to prove the first claim, I would be doing the same thing to you that the market has been doing, dressing up a base rate as a verdict. So let me start with the thing that broke, because something genuinely did. Entry-level hiring at companies adopting generative AI has fallen by around 80% per quarter since 2023, according to a Harvard working paper that looked at 66 million workers across more than 250,000 firms. The door most people were told to walk through, the junior role you take to learn the trade, is being welded half shut while everyone is still being handed the old map. So more and more of us are throwing ourselves at an opening a fraction of the size it used to be, and then privately concluding that the problem is our own inadequacy. Now here is the objection I have to take seriously first, because if I skip it, I haven't learned anything. The objection is, don't you dare tell me this is a mindset. Don't tell me to stay positive and manifest a callback. Applying really doesn't work, and you're about to gaslight me into thinking my attitude is the issue. You are partly right, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. The signal really is broken. Let me give you the numbers because they are on your side, not mine. Research across 2024 and 2025 puts the share of online listings that are ghost jobs postings with no real hiring behind them somewhere between 18 and 27%. One analysis of LinkedIn listings in the US put it above 27. In one survey, 4 in 10 companies admitted they had posted a fake listing. In another, 93% of HR professionals said their own employer posts ghost jobs. And the US Bureau of Labor Statistics reported around 7.4 million posted openings against 5.2 million actual hires in the middle of 2025, which means, very roughly, that 1 in 3 posted roles never becomes a hire at all. So no, it is not all in your head. Some of the doors you have been knocking on were painted on the wall. They were never openable. They were posted to build a resume pipeline or to look like a growing company or to satisfy a policy or to intimidate the current staff into working harder. When you knocked and nothing happened, nothing was ever going to happen, and that had precisely zero to do with you. That is the first claim, and I want you to notice it is already settled before any physics arrives. If a large share of the doors are fake, then the silence you are receiving is even less about you than you feared, not more. The brokenness is external. It sits in the system, not in your worth. The numbers carry that on their own. Here's what the numbers do not do. They do not stop the feeling. You can know intellectually that a third of the postings are hollow and still refresh your inbox at 11 at night, reading the emptiness as a report card. And that is where the second claim comes in and where the physics helps. And I want to be exact about what it does and does not do. The idea is the second law of thermodynamics, and the version I want you to hold comes from the physicist Ludwig Boltzmann, who in 1877 gave this order an actual equation. His insight, stripped of the mathematics, is this. For any situation, there are a certain number of arrangements that count as ordered and working, and a vastly, enormously larger number that count as scrambled and broken. A shuffle deck lands in disorder because there is essentially one sorted order and an astronomically high number of unsorted ones. Your desk drifts toward mess because there are thousands of ways for it to be messy and only a few for it to be tidy. You never once walked into a room and found that it had cleaned itself while you were out. This order is not a punishment. It is simply the overwhelming majority of the possibilities. Now, the honest limit, and I'm naming it because it changes what you are allowed to conclude. Boltzmann's law is a statement about energy and particles in closed physical systems. A job market is not a closed physical system. It is full of people importing energy and making choices. So applying entropy to your inbox is an analogy, not a literal derivation, and I'm not going to dress it up as more than that, which means the physics proves nothing about you. It cannot. Physics does not know you exist and has no opinion on your worth. All it explains is why the base rate is low, why failure is the plain, ordinary output of a channel like this, rather than a strange event that demands a heavy personal explanation. An application is exactly a situation with far more ways to fail than to succeed. Think about everything that has to line up for one to land. The role has to be real. The timing has to be right. The keywords on the resume have to survive the automated filter. A human has to actually open it. They have to open it before the position is quietly filled by someone's cousin. Your document has to not be seventh in a stack of 400 that got skimmed for 8 seconds each. Hundreds of independent things can send it into the void, and roughly one path leads to a yes. There are many kinds of sickness and only one kind of health. Decay is the default. Order is the rare, expensive exception. So hold the two things side by side separately. Silence is not about you, the market data says so, and the silence is not surprising. The physics says so. Put together, they do not mean stay positive, they mean stop assigning a low base rate to your own soul. I know this pattern from the other side of the table. I have spent years at Karrierehelden sitting with thousands of applicants, and there is one sentence we see so often it has stopped surprising anyone except the candidate it happens to. You apply, you get invited, you talk to them, they tell you, sorry, the position has just been filled, and a month later, the same position is back on the job board. Nobody called the runner-up. Nobody explains anything. And here's the part I want to be honest about, because it matters for everything that follows. Even from where I sit, you cannot tell which kind of door it was. A listing that was never real, a hire that fell through, a budget that quietly vanished, a process that simply dissolved. Nobody tells you because nobody has to. And that is the real finding. The silence is not a coded message you fail to decrypt. It is a channel that carries no information at all. A channel that carries no information about you cannot be evidence about you. What it can be is a reason to stop feeding it, because in all those years, the applicants I watched get unstuck were never the ones who doubled their volume. They were the ones who found a person instead of a portal. Because there is a second thinker I need here, and it is Peter Drucker, who said the most useless thing in the world is doing efficiently that which should not be done at all. He does not reward effort in general. It rewards correctly directed effort. And that distinction is the difference between two kinds of action that both feel like trying. The mass application into the online portal is a high entropy channel. It is a shuffled deck. You are one of hundreds filtered by a machine aimed at a door that has a real chance of being painted on. Adding more of those does not change your odds in any meaningful way. You can send 500 instead of 140 and the channel does not care. You have simply become very productive at feeding the void. Then there is the other kind of channel, the low entropy one, where information about you can actually transmit. And this is not a feeling, it is a measurable thing you can go and check. Referred candidates make up a small slice of all applications, often under 10%. And yet they account for something like a third to 40% of actual hires. Put differently, a referral can lift your chances of reaching an interview several-fold over a cold portal application. That gap is the entire argument in one number, and you do not have to take my word for it. You can watch it happen in your own search. A referral hands your name to a human instead of a filter. A piece of visible proof of work, something you built or wrote or solved that a hiring manager can judge on its own terms, makes you a known quantity instead of a resume in a stack of 400. A direct, specific message to the actual human doing the hiring about the actual problem they have reaches a person who can receive a signal. These are the few arrangements out of the enormous number where something true about who you are survives the journey instead of dissolving into noise. You stop paying what I think of as an attribution tax, the emotional cost of treating every silence as a data point about your worth, and you move that freed up energy to the handful of places where your effort is actually coupled to the outcome. I want to be careful and not sell you a clean escape, because there is a real cost on the other side, and pretending there isn't would make me one more person handing you a false map. The high entropy channel has one genuine comfort. It is anonymous. When 400 silent portals never write back, no single human has looked at you and said no. The low entropy channels remove that shelter. Asking someone inside a company to refer you means risking a no with a face on it. Publishing proof of your work means putting something out that can be judged, and judged badly. Messaging the hiring manager directly means being seen before you are ready. That exposure is real. It is heavier than the spreadsheet, and I'm not going to tell you it isn't. I also cannot promise you that a referral lands or that your project gets read. What I can tell you with as much confidence as the evidence allows is that these are the only channels where a true signal about you has any chance of getting through at all. And because that exposure is exactly what freezes people, let me make the next move small enough to actually survive it. Not a new campaign, not 500 applications reorganized into a nicer spreadsheet. One message today to one real human about one real problem you could genuinely help with. That is small enough to slip under the fear, and it is a low entropy channel by definition, because there is a person on the other end who can receive something about who you are. You are not trying to win the market today. You're trying to send one signal into a place where signal is possible. Now I want to widen this because I have been talking about a spreadsheet, and the reflex underneath it is far older and far bigger than a job search. The move where a mind in pain reaches for the most expensive possible cause itself and then lives as if that guess were proven fact is the same move underneath almost every silence a person misreads. The friend who slowly stopped writing back. The years of work nobody ever answered for. the relationship that ended without a reason you were ever given, the loss that left a room quiet in a way no argument could fill. In every one of those, the silence is raw data with no verdict attached, and a person in the dark assigns it the cruelest cause available and calls the guess the truth. If you came to this carrying something heavier than an inbox, I do not want you to think the mechanism skipped you. It didn't. A devastating silence is still a silence, and it still does not get to tell you what you are. And there is a harder version of this that the whole optimization frame can quietly insult, so I want to name it directly. Some of you did everything right. You got in every door, you collected every yes you were told to chase, and you are standing inside the finished life, reading a strange blankness as proof that something in you is broken. For you, the honest answer is not another channel and not a better funnel. Sometimes the silence you keep trying to fill was never asking to be filled. Sometimes what looks like a missing result is the quiet of a person who has already done enough. And the only misread is calling that quiet a failure. Directed effort is the answer when the question is how to reach a door. It is not the answer to whether you are allowed to stop. Which brings me to the one thing in all of this you actually control. Not whether the doors are open, not how much courage you can throw at the same void. The market gets to determine the odds in each channel. It does not get to determine what you conclude about yourself. A silence is data. You are the one who assigns it a cause. Most people, without ever noticing they are doing it, assign it the most expensive cause there is, themselves, and then build a life on top of that guess. To author your own story here is to refuse that and to read the same evidence accurately instead. High entropy events in a partly rigged system carrying almost no information about your worth, pointing you, if you let them, either toward the few places where your effort is truly connected to the result or toward the quieter recognition that you have already arrived somewhere and can stop treating your own peace as a symptom. So think back to that spreadsheet and the sentence forming underneath it. The room was always going to gather dust. There was never a message about the person living in it, only about how the world tends when energy is not directed. The next silence is already on its way to you because in this market it always is. When it lands, the only question that matters is not whether you can bear it one more. No, it is this. What will you let that silence prove about you? And what will you decide is finally, quietly enough?